We had seen earlier that a daughter of a Kohen, a Bas Kohen, daughter of a Kohen, can marry a halal. Okay, that's permitted. Rav Papa and Rav Huna b'rei Rav Yeshua equally hintzavu la'asrei d'Ravidi. Rav Papa and Rav Huna came to this place called Hintzavu, a place in Babylonia, which was where Rav Idi lived. Now, and they asked them, or they asked Rav Papa, who's haru kisheros lehinasa lipsulin olo? Are normal, like eligible women who we're talking about daughters of Kohanim, can they marry halalim or not? Amarlu Rav Papa Tanisur. Rav Papa says we have a mission on that already. Sorry. Sorry, you'll see in Olami Bavel. There were 10 families, or genealogically identified groups that came up from Bavel to the land of Israel. And this is in the time of Ezra, right? Their return from Babylonia to build the second temple. Kohanim, Levim, Yisraelim. There were the Kohanim, the Levis, and the regular Jews. That's 3. Chalalim, the Chalalim, the disqualified Kohen. Gerim, converts. V'charurim, those are freed slaves, the former Canaanite slaves that were freed. Mamzerim, Nisinim, which are the Givonim, which we discussed a couple of weeks ago, the converts in the time of that were in the time of Joshua. Shtuki, Sufi. These 2 other classes, which Shtuki is someone who we don't know who his father is, and a Sufi is both parents are unknown, like an abandoned infant. Okay, so those are all the classes. Mutarin, sorry, 1 second. Okay, so what are the rules about them? Kohanim, Levim, Yisraelim, Mutarin, Levav, Zebazet. The first 3, Kohanim, Levim, and regular Jews can intermarry with each other. Levim, Yisraelim, V'chalolim, Gerim, Harurim, Mutar and these other classes, non-Kohanim, can marry Halalim, they can marry converts, and they can marry freed slaves. But Kohanim cannot. Gere, Harure, Mazeri, Nesine, Shtuki, Vasufi, and these kind of non-purebred, if you will, classes can marry with each other. The ilukonos l'chol lokatani. So that's the end of the Mishnah, but it doesn't say that that the daughters of Kohanim can marry a halal. So does that imply that that's not permitted? But that's different than what we saw. Amalei Rav Huna b'rei Rav Yeshua. Rav Huna answered him, Kol hechadahani nasve mehane, where vahani nasve mehane katani. What the Mishnah is talking about is where anybody, the men from one group can take women from the other group and vice versa. That's what the Mishnah is talking about. But the case of a Kohen and a Halal, sure, the daughter of a Kohen can marry a Halal, but the son of a Kohen or a regular Kohen cannot marry a Halala. So that's why the Mishnah left it out. Kohen, Kevin Dili means of Halala Asir. Since a male Kohen wants to marry a Halala that he cannot, Lokatani, so the Mishnah did not include it. So the implication from our Mishnah does not contradict the idea that the daughter of a Kohen can still marry a Halal. Also, coming to Ravidi Barafin. So they went to Ravidi. Amar he said, Dardike, children. Hache Amar Rabbi Yehuda Amar. This is what Rabbi Yehuda said. Lo huzer sheres linasi lipsulim. In general, the daughters of regular Kohanim, so daughters of Kohanim, are not forbidden to marry disqualified people. So you're just agreeing with this. So it comes out that everybody's happy with this rule. Now the Mishnah said, Shnios midibrei sofrim. We talked about the secondary arayos who were prohibited by the Sofrim, by the later generation of rabbis. The sons of the people of Birei place asked Rav Sheshes, what if a woman is a secondary erva to the husband but not to the yavam? Does she get the ksuba? So what is the deliberation? Since the funds for the ktuba are supposed to come from the first husband, the dead husband, from his estate. So So if one second. Oh yeah, so since she's a shnia to the Baal, she's forbidden to the Baal, to the first husband, she doesn't get wouldn't get her ketubah, right? Or do we say kevad ilu leisla merishon takin l'Rabbanan misheni, since we have a rule that if for whatever reason.
I lost your sound.
Oh, sorry.
I got you now. I got
Okay.
you.
Let me get this out of the way. So since we have a general rule that if for whatever reason the woman can't collect from her first husband's estate, then she can collect from the second, from the Yavam. So Isla, then she should have the Ketubah from the Yavam. Amal Rosh Hashanah. So he answered, Tinisua, we have a mission about this. Ketubas al Nitzei Bal Rishon. She has to collect from the estate of the first husband, the deceased husband. But if she was a secondary erva to the first husband, then she can't collect at all. She can't collect from the first husband, and she has no claim on the yavam. So Michlal Deika de Islam Yavam. So that implies that there are other cases where she does have a claim on the yavam. So yeah, because she's a secondary erva to the first husband, she can't collect. But and she can't collect from the yavam. But that implies that there is a case, or in some other case, where she can collect from the yavam. Now we have to reread the price. She has to collect from the first husband. And if she can't collect from the first one, then the rabbis enacted, for her that she could collect from the yavam. The second husband. However, if she was a secondary erva to the first husband, then she gets nothing. Then she's completely ineligible for the ketubah. Okay. We have the case of a widow married to a Kohen Gadol, Grusha v'chalusa l'Kohen Hedyot, or a divorcee, or a woman who has undergone chalitza married to an ordinary Kohen. So that's forbidden. Yeshon mizanos ain lahen mizanos. Can they collect, like, since they're married illegally, do they have the right to be supported by the husband? Right? Because generally speaking, when a couple is married, the husband has the obligation to support the wife, right? But here we're talking about an improper marriage. So does she have that right? So Gemara wants to understand further. What are we talking about? To say if she's living with him, so like he's required to divorce her, right? So you're going to say, and he has to support her? No, like the obligation is not to support the wife. The obligation is to divorce the wife. So what are we talking about? Where he is overseas. Okay, so you can't insist that he divorce the wife because he's not here. He's overseas. The love of meantime, she needs to, she needs to eat. So she borrows money, right? And she supports herself.
That's
so
interesting,
now,
because we've seen before in some Gemara that you could marry someone if you send a shliach, like a messenger.
Right.
But you can't divorce someone by sending a messenger.
Exactly. Right. And anyway, like even if, that would apply in the case where, hang on one second. Sorry. Sorry, my father calling. So yeah, okay. So that, yeah, what you were saying is if the husband is here, you can, can you have him send the divorce? But here the husband isn't even here, and the husband's the one who has to send the divorce, right? So he's not here. So meanwhile, she has to support herself, so she borrows money. So is he on the hook for the money that she borrowed? What's the rule? Mizone tanaik tubaninu. Do we say that the support is a condition of the ktuba? Midisla ktuba, isla mizone. So she has a ktuba. Like they got married. Sure, it was improper, but he signed the contract, right? Odilma, or maybe ktuba de la mishkal umepek isla. The ktuba she can claim, right? That like maybe like the ktuba doesn't specify the support. The ksuba is in case of divorce, then she gets a payoff, right?
Right.
That's the contract, right? So the question is, does the ksuba imply that she's also entitled to support while they're married or not? But the support while they're married, which might actually encourage her to stay married to him, right? Like, they're married. She has a source of income now, so like, why would we agree to that she's entitled to that income when we don't want them to be married? So he answers, no, she can't collect. She can't collect for support. Well, Tanya, but the Gemara asks, isn't there a brisa yeshla? The brisa says she does get it. The Gemara answers, Kitanya he lachar misa. That means after the husband's death. Okay, so the husband dies, and she gets supported from his estate. Right now, we don't care anymore. They're not married anymore because he's dead. So we're okay. So she should get supported. So that's when we say she does have the right to collect support payments, but while they're still married, she does not. Or some have a different version of this discussion. Rabbi Yochanan answered, Tanya, Yeshla, the Mishnah says that she has the right to support. So the Blazer would ask, so, but wait, like, why are we allowing this support to go on? That he should be divorcing her, not supporting her. Tanya. So Rabbi Yochanan says, well, what about the Mishnah? Yeshla. The Mishnah says that she does have support. So that's when he's dead already. Then that's when we say she's entitled to support. So it comes out the same. Tana Rabban, the rabbis taught. Alman Kohen Gadol, Grusha V'Chalutza Kohen Hedyot. Same case, a forbidden marriage to a Kohen, either Kohen Gadol or regular Kohen. Yesh Ksuba Peros Mizonos Belos. She is entitled to the Ksuba, to Peros, like the profit on the profit produced by her property, by her the property that she brings into the marriage, mizonos, which is what we've just been talking about, support, and belos, and worn out clothing, right? She can, if she brought clothing into the marriage, she can take them out when the marriage ends. She can take the used clothes with her. So what about all that? So that is all provided to her. V'hipsula, but she's still a halalash. Her status is, no longer eligible to be married to a Kohen, or not no longer. She is not eligible. Uvlad apostle, and also any children from that Kohen also are halal. And we try to force him to divorce her. Okay, now shnios min divrei sofrim. What about the secondary arayos that we forbade? Ein lo ksuba, that we don't have the ksuba, lo peros, nor the profits from the property she brings into the marriage, lo bazonos, or she doesn't have support, lo belos, she doesn't get to take out the clothes when they get divorced, v'ik shera. However, she is eligible for a Kohen. Uvlana kasher, and the child is eligible to a Kohen also. So even though it's a secondary arayos, that wasn't included in the decree by the rabbis. But still, we try to force him to give her up. Amar Shimon says, why do we allow her to have the ksuba? Because because both of them are now disqualified. He becomes a halal because he married an ineligible woman, and she becomes a halala in the sense that she's no longer allowed to marry a Kohen at all, and her children are halalim. So v'chol makom shehu pasul v'hi psula, any case where that is the case, konsu ksuba. Then they said, you know what, this is so blatant that you have to pay the ksuba. Why do you say the opposite when it comes to the secondary arayos? Because that doesn't disqualify them to others, right? Sure, you married this person you shouldn't have married, but if you should, in the future, you're still eligible, and she's still eligible to a kohen. They didn't, they didn't do anything wrong kohen-wise, right? They may have done something that we don't like and that we forbade, but it's nothing to do with their future eligibility. So in that case, they said, yeah, you have to pay the ksuba, because there's less of a inherent deterrent, right? Like if you feel like you are kind of negatively affecting your family line, then that's a deterrent already. But if you don't have the deterrent, so we're going to add a deterrent by saying, yeah, and you have to pay the ksuba. Rabbi Omer, halal divrei Torah. That the difference is that the not marrying a Kohen or a Kohen Gadol, that's a Torah rule. Divrei Torah and tzrichin chizuk. There, we don't need to add any negative. Hang on a second again. Sorry. Okay. So yeah, so if it's a Torah rule, then we assume that is enough of a deterrent for people. But if it's not a Torah rule, if it's the rabbinic rule about the secondary arayos, then we have to strengthen that by making him pay the ketubah. Davar acher, and a third reason, zehu margila. In the case of the Kohen, the Kohen Gadol and the widow, or the regular Kohen and the divorcee, so it is the man who is like talking the woman into marrying her. Why is this the case? Yeah, we assume that the woman is not going to encourage a marriage or pursue a marriage which will disqualify her children, right? So we're going to assume that it was the man, the Kohen in this case, who was the initiator, the persuasive suitor. Okay, therefore we're going to say, yeah, you were the guy who got yourself into this mess. We're going to make you pay the ketubah. In the case of the arayos, where there is no disqualification, we're going to assume that it's the woman who wanted to marry the man, and so we're not going to penalize him. We're going to say, yeah, you don't get your ksuba. Okay. So this third reason, whose opinion was that? Some say it was Shimon Matam Kamar, and he was giving the reason of his previous statement. Matam Amru Pasal Hipsula Konsulas Ksuba. Why did they say that he does have to pay the ktuba where both of them are ineligible? Because we're assuming that it was him that was doing the persuading about the marriage, right? That was behind the idea for them to get married. Matam Hukasha Vikshera Konsulas Ksuba. Because if they were both okay, then we assume it was. So just that Reb Shimon ben Lazar is being attributed with this third reason. Ikadiyamar, or some read it this way. Rabbi Katani Lava, it was Rabbi's idea. And why do you need a second explanation? Because of the case of the chalutza, right? The woman who had chalitza, and she's not allowed to marry a kohen, and she did anyway. But isn't it rabbinic? And she gets her ksuba. Why? It's not a Torah rule that the chalutza can't marry the kohen. That's a rabbinic rule, not a Torah rule. So Hadar Amar. So then he said, "Oh, there must be a different reason. It's not because one is a Torah rule and the other is rabbinic, because it's mixed. So Kevan the Pasal Lami Durabanan. But since so then he said, you know what? The reason must be since that rabbinically she's disqualified. Zehu Margila. So we assume it was the man who was behind the marriage. Vizuhi Margila. So but the other cases was her. Okay. So what's the difference between these two reasons, right? We had one reason given that is because one is a Torah rule and the other is not a Torah rule. So the Torah rule needs, the non-Torah rule, the rabbinic rule needs to be fortified. And the other reason was given that, because it depends on whether they're both eligible, they both remain eligible or they both become ineligible for the future. So what's the difference between these two reasons? Mamzeres in the Sinal Israel Ikabinayo. So remember, back in the original thing, we were talking about all the different classes that can mix. So the difference would be when it comes to a regular Jew marrying a Nasin, right, one of these Givoni people, or a Mamzer, or a female Mamzer. So if you say that the reason and the difference between whether you get a ksuba or not is whether the rule is a Torah rule or not, so this, a Jew is not allowed to marry a mamzer. The Mandyar Neshu Margila, but if you say that we're trying to assume whose idea this marriage was, he Margila, in the case of the regular guy married to a female mamzer, you're going to assume that it was the mamzer person who, was at a disadvantage because there are very few people she can marry. So it must have been, we're going to assume it was her idea. And if it was her idea, then we will penalize her, as it were, by not entitling her to the ksuba. But what about according to Rabbi Eliezer that says the child of that union is a slave and a mamzer? So then, we would assume that's never going to happen because the woman is never going to be able to successfully convince the guy when his children are going to have this double stigma. Elam Yosef. Let's Rabbi Yosef suggests another reason for having two different explanations. Machzir Gerusha Mishanises Ikabenau. The difference between the two approaches is a person who is married, divorces, and then he remarries the original wife after she had been married to someone else. So that's forbidden by the Torah, but that would be so the question is that a Torah prohibition? So that's the Torah prohibition. So the Rebbe who said that the difference is if it's Torah or rabbinic, so this is a case which is forbidden, and we would say yes, she can get the ksuba because since it's a Torah obligation, it doesn't need strengthening. But the one who says it depends whose idea the marriage was, in the case of the divorced woman, it must be her idea. No self-respecting man is going to try to remarry his wife after she's been married to somebody else, is the assumption here, a cultural assumption for sure. So it must have been her idea. So since it was her idea, no, we're not going to entitle her to ksuba. But Rabbi Akiva disagrees. So Rabbi Akiva says that that the status of mamzer, we generally assume that it's only in the case of adultery, but Rabbi Akiva is more expansive in that definition. And he says anyone that is born from a union of people who have even just a regular negative prohibition, not a severe prohibition, but a regular prohibition, like a kohen to a halal, would be considered a mamzer. So that's an outlier opinion, but what about according to that? Again, this would be a case where the divorcee would not persuade would not try to persuade the first husband to take her back because all of her children would be mamzerim. So according to Rabbi Akiva, we still would not understand why are they these two different approaches. So Rav Papa answers, what's the difference between these two approaches? A Kohen Gadol who marries a non-virgin. Okay, so presumably someone who has not been married, right? She's not a widow, she's not a divorcee, but let's say she had sex outside of marriage. Okay, so she's not a virgin. So the prohibition of the Kohen Gadol is, it says specifically he can't marry a widow, can't marry a divorcee, but then also says in a positive sense he must marry a virgin. Okay, he can only marry a virgin. So Mandiyamar deraisa, Hanami deraisa. So if you say that the distinction between ksuba and non-ksuba is if it's a Torah law, this is a Torah law. The Torah law is you can marry only a virgin. But if we're talking about where it's whose decision, who's behind the marriage, in this case, we're going to assume that the woman is the one that convinced the Kohen Gadol to marry her, because presumably he is more. There's no issue of mamzerim according to Rabbi Akiva because it's a positive commandment, not a negative commandment, right? She's only forbidden because of the positive commandment to only marry a virgin. So even Rabbi Akiva would say that the children are not mamzerim, and so therefore we assume that it was the woman who was behind the marriage. Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, Yesh Chalal Mechai V'Yaseh. What about Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, who says even in the case of where the union is forbidden only by a positive commandment, it's still not still mamzer, it still produces a halal. So then the woman wouldn't pursue the marriage because she knows that her children would be disqualified, right? Even though it's only a positive commandment, according to Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, that's the rule. So again, what is the reason that we have these two different approaches? Ravashi. Finally, you come to Ravashi. Here's a case of where a person accuses his wife of being a sota, right? He accuses her of infidelity, and so there's that whole ritual ceremony where she's taken to the temple and made to drink the water, whenever. So after he's made this accusation, then he can no longer sleep with her, right? But that is a rabbinic rule, I think. We'll see in a second. No, it's a Torah rule. So Mandi Amar Daraisa, Hanami Daraisa. So this is a Torah rule. Mandi Amar Meishu Margila. But if it were concerned with who's behind the marriage, Ha He Margilale. Here we would say that the woman, because there is no opinion that says that their children are ineligible for anything. Yes, they're not supposed to sleep together once he's made this accusation, but if they do, improperly, then there's no ramifications for the children, and therefore we assume that it's the wife, the woman, who initiated this. But we still have a problem with this. But according to Rav Masya, who says that, in such a case where they're traveling to the temple after he made the accusation and they reconcile and they sleep together on the way, that puts her in the category of a zona, of a prostitute, right? And so, and that is, therefore she's forbidden to the Kohen Gadol. So that's an outlying opinion again, because usually, someone who's put in that category is someone who never had a relationship, a marriage with the person. But if you have a marriage with this person and you're not supposed to sleep together and you do, that doesn't make you a prostitute. But according to Ramasya, it does. So that puts her, so hello, Margot Lumide. So then, if she would be given that label, then she would presumably not initiate that reunion. Right, so it must have been him. So we still don't have a reason. So finally, we come to Mar Baravashi. Mar Baravashi said, "Sotavada now." We're talking about a woman who was accused of being of infidelity, and it was 1 second. Okay, so if it's a confirmed case of adultery, and then and if they got back together, so whose idea would that have been? That must have been the woman's idea, right? So it's a Torah prohibition. So from that perspective, we are going to allow her ketubah. But if it was her idea, and here we according to all opinions, we'll assume that it's her idea to get back together, then we deny her ketubah. Okay, that was kind of fun. I guess we'll stop here for today and pick up the Mishnah tomorrow.
What's the baby's name? You had a baby.
Oh, the baby's name is Geffen Ruth.
Very nice.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm sure it was a beautiful ceremony.
It was
Enjoy.
very nice. It was very nice, and the smoked fish was good too. Okay, have a good day, Stan. See you soon.
Be well.
Bye.